Welcome to How to Leave Teaching, the podcast for educators feeling stuck, overwhelmed, or just yearning for something more. I'm Julie, once in your shoes, navigating those same challenges and emotions. Here, we share heartfelt stories and tactical advice from former teachers who found their way out, ensuring you're not alone on this journey. I am so glad you found us. Well, Eric, thanks for joining us. I am so happy and excited to hear your story. I know that teachers are very eager to hear, especially from a male teacher that has gone to the other side. I think we've mostly interviewed female teachers because that's the predominant, gender of teachers, it seems like. So I'm really excited to have you.
Well, thank you for letting me be here. I think this is really exciting. And I hadn't ever, that's probably me being a male, not ever considering that as a thing. But yeah, that's a thing, that there are a lot more females that are leaving this profession. No, thank you. That's a cool perspective I'd not thought of.
Yeah, but I have a lot of teachers, male teachers that reach out to me and, they're kind of like, are you the right person for me? So to work with. So yeah, it's great. Well, maybe we could start with you just talking about your teaching experience and kind of like what you taught and how you got into it and how you were thinking about your career at the beginning or whenever you were teaching.
Yeah, I think I was one of those kids that I was told, like, you'd be a great teacher. And so I was like, okay, I think that would be a good thing that I could go and do. And so I'd always, like, going through high school and stuff, like, been in positions where I have those relationships of teaching. And then I went on to, and I thought I was going to be a business major in school. And then I got a job at the writing center. And the director, she said, you should be, not only do you have a grasp of writing, but you should teach other people how to write as well. And so that's really when I kind of fell in love with the idea of it being a fulfilling career. Was in that moment. And then I went on to go to graduate school, and that's where I started my teaching experience is primarily in higher education. I was teaching developmental writing students up through, which was the bulk of what I was teaching in freshman writing or first year composition, and then up through like technical writing and business writing and things like that.
Yeah, I did the same, like to a T, all of
that
stuff.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I was like, I've got my 13th graders in here because I was in the university space after I was in K-12, but it's really similar in a lot of ways, so
yeah. That's
cool. So how many years were you doing that?
Cumulatively about 7 years.
Oh, wow.
I think. Yeah, like through grad school and then afterwards. After I finished my doctorate, I got a job teaching developmental writing at a university in Washington State, at Central Washington University. And that's when, COVID happened and where the story goes from there, yeah.
Oh, really? Okay, so this is kind of a recent transition in a sense. And so was COVID part of the reason that you...
100%.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I think that there will be studies about the population of people who are displaced because of COVID. And maybe not. Maybe that's just arrogance. I don't know. Or me thinking a lot. But my wife and I, we were both teaching at a university in very similar roles. And we, I knew I was going to get laid off before she did. Her getting laid off was a surprise. She was planning for her fall courses. Like the English department was communicating with her about her students. She was talking with her future students when she got laid off. And so the circumstantially, so where we were in this little apartment in Ellensburg, Washington, and COVID was happening. It was March 2020. My wife, she was 8 months pregnant with our third child. And we had a month left on our lease.
No.
And our managers were like, no, students are coming back. We're not going to let you renew your lease, or extend. Like, no, that's stupid.
Right.
And we're like, are you sure? And they're like, yep, pretty sure. And so we were kind of panicking. I was packing everything into a storage unit. And this guy named Aaron gave us a 6-week lease on his house, which is awesome. This little tiny house. And we had a baby in that house. We had a home birth in the middle of the pandemic. The jobs that I were applying to were just disappearing.
Yeah.
They just weren't there. And it was May 2020. That's when I really shifted my perspective and just kind of had to swallow that I was no longer going to be in education the way that I thought I was going to be anymore. And I really had to shift my approach to LinkedIn and to getting a different job and to all of these different kinds of things. We packed up the rest of our stuff into a storage unit in Washington, thinking that we were going to come back because we had been to Washington to plant roots. Like we'd been moving 10 times across 6 states in 10 years.
Yep.
And we just didn't want to do that anymore. And so we decided to move into my parents' basement in Maryland to figure it out. And so we both filed for unemployment. We both had multiple degrees between us. And we were living in my parents' basement. And that's when I started the social media campaign called Higher Ed. I did it for a couple different reasons. One was I could not go into a room and say, I have a PhD, you should hire me. Or I used to be a teacher, you should hire me.
Yeah.
You can't do that. What would I teach my writing students? Show, don't tell.
Right.
And so I created a social media campaign called Higher Ed. And I was trying to say, hey, everybody, let's get, because academics and teachers they were not on LinkedIn when I was there in 2020. And then, that sounds so weird to say it like that,
I know.
but it's a true thing. And I needed to show people what I was capable of doing. So I built this thing, and it was supposed to be on June 8th. It was going to be National Best Friends Day. I said, go and connect with someone on LinkedIn. Like, go support your friend.
Yeah.
Black Lives Matter erupted across the country with protests, and I didn't want to draw attention away from that. I also had to move my family across the country. And so I put my head down and said, I'm going to plan an event called Higher Ed. And if all these people who are out here hustling, these coaches, if they're savvy, and it turns out I was thinking ahead. I wouldn't say it any negative way. I said, like, if they saw that there was an event going on, all they had to do is say, hey, I'm doing something on that day too. And they could just piggyback off of something very, very easily.
Yeah.
And so rather than doing that, I jumped out in front of it and I started inviting career coaches to participate in an event.
Nice.
And so it was a 2-day event, and it was August 3rd and 4th, I think it was. I can't believe this happened. While all this was going on and moving across the country and everything and packing everything up, I conducted over 100 to 120 informational interviews with people in 2 months. And I had 280 registered participants. I had 50 speakers. I had 19 live workshops. And I was live streaming and moderating and producing 9 panels being streamed to 3 social media platforms, because I had to show people what I was capable of doing.
So does that mean that you were wanting to do something like social media campaigns?
No, like, that's what's weird is that there's later in the story where I just really gave up on a whole bunch of stuff because I am very against having my social media persona tied directly to my income. You can taste it in other people's content.
Right.
And I don't want that. And especially, I don't want other people's dollars whispering or even trying to dictate my message and my word. But what I wanted to show people what I was capable of doing was so much. Right, because it wasn't just social media.
Yeah.
It was going and talking to people. It was building the back end. It was running things. Right. I was told by one person who was a good friend and who I became friends with. He said he had just recently attended a professional organization's shindig to try to do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And mine was measures above. Why? Because that's the kind of person that you should be hiring is me, right?
Yeah.
And the other part of it is that I was so incredibly alone. I was trying to turn to my academic community that was experiencing their own hardship. I didn't have time for another sad story, which I just had to swallow. And so I knew that there were other people who were like me who really, really felt alone. And so I started connecting with them. And so it morphed into that. Like by that time, I had about 300 people that I was connected to on LinkedIn. Now I think I'm approaching 14,000. I don't think that is significant or large, but I think it is a measure. And the thing that I love about everything that has gotten me to this point, and there's a lot more that we can talk about, is just that opportunities like this to help other people when they feel like shit is something that I can't not try to do.
Yeah.
I really love it. And so thank you again for having me.
Oh, yeah. No, this is great. And so this wasn't a discrete thing, 2020. This is still going on. And what does it look like now?
It's gone through a couple phases. So, well, it worked. Let's say, let's finish that story. Like, it worked. No, we'll answer that. No, I don't want to change the question because it's a great question. It turned into Translate Academia, another hashtag that I created. I was very intent on not using my name, LLC, and not trying to brand anything particular. I wanted other people to want to use it. And now there are hundreds of followers that follow that on LinkedIn now, which is just so cool to me.
Yeah.
Around June 21, I realized that TikTok is amazing. And if all the content creators I respected on LinkedIn were all creating TikTok content. And I said, if I want to be ahead of the game, I got to be ahead of the game. Innovation defined as being 10% ahead of the game.
Yeah.
Right? So I got on TikTok and started making, it was just the easiest thing to do. The easiest thing to do was to just go on someone's profile and just capture my face while I'm looking at their profile and comment on it. And say,
nice.
Hey, here's what you can do to improve your profile. And I asked for volunteers, right? Why did I do this? So I could show people what I was capable of doing. I wasn't just going out there and making TikToks. I was creating, on the back end, a database that now you can go and you can search for all my TikToks by category and by all these other things with this back end database that I built. So you can, not only can I get on TikTok and engage people, but I know what to do with that data and how to draw insights from that data.
Yeah.
And how to do cool things with it. And so it morphed that, and then I went through another job change, and then I realized, like, okay, I want to utilize this, lack of a better word, following. I thought of following, momentum, I think is a better word. And I was going to go and I created educators.network, which is how I do a lot of my operating LLC stuff right now. And with that, I was going to start this is so fun for me. I was going to start not a staffing agency, but a sourcing agency, right? Because I knew a lot of people.
Yeah.
I knew a lot of people who were looking for jobs. I can just come in, be that connecting piece, and say, you give me 10% of whatever you hired them for.
Sure.
Boom. And I was ramping up and ready to go and to do it. And then it was August this past year. It just hit me. It was like 10:45 at night. I was walking around my kid's school because I was just blowing off steam, and I just said, I cannot have my identity tied to my monetary value. Mm-hmm. That is just something I will not ever do. And so I just dropped it. And then that's when I said, hey, I'm going to stop doing this. I'm going to start looking for full-time. And this was August. And I said, I think it's going to take me about 6 months. Here's the path. And I said, it's going to do this. And these are the things I need to do. 6 months later, I have a job.
Yeah.
And it worked. So I've made that transition from one thing to another twice in the past 3 years.
I think that's really something that my listeners need to think about, because we talk a lot about gaps in your resume in terms of your skill set. You know, if you want to go from teaching to, say, data science, okay, that's what I did. And I was an English teacher. And so it's like, well, what am I going to put on my resume to demonstrate that I have these skills that I didn't actually get in teaching? You know, there's some I did, there are some gaps. And I've been advising teachers, do some freelance work or go out and take initiative to do volunteer in a capacity that you could leverage in your resume. And what you're describing is this holistic kind of ecosystem that you created so that you could speak to all of these different things that you could do, or all of them in concert. So
yeah, I think so. A couple points that you said that I want to hit, right? There is no such thing as a gap in experience because you continue to live.
Yeah. There's
no such thing as a gap, right? There is such thing as a story. The way that I got my two positions that I got, and I made the same transition from English to data analytics.
Oh, funny.
The way that it happened, right, is because I went in and I said, you know what I'm great at? Storytelling. Do you want to know why? Let me tell you a story. I showed people what I was capable of doing. I was presenting myself. Like, the reason that I had a following at all was I was in a podcast one time and they asked me to blur my background. And I said, nope, that's my parents' shit back there, right? My desk is right next to the sleeping bags and the Dutch ovens, and this used to be my childhood bedroom, and this is where I am right now.
And
I am
that's
at
edifying for other people.
And exactly, and that's why, like, because people saw me and they said, I hope that's not me. There are people with doctorate degrees saying, I hope I don't need to live in my parents' basement. I did, right? And
yet you were leading a movement.
And see, and I don't even necessarily think it was like this movement, but now that I used the word momentum previously, it kind of makes sense, right? But like what I needed to do, and what I think that what your listeners need to do, is to do what you have always done, and that is create.
Yeah.
Teachers are nothing but content creators. All we do is create and deliver content.
Yeah,
right?
It's true.
So shape that, right? Create a narrative around that. The way that here's how I got my two jobs, and the stories are strikingly similar. The first time it was September 2020, and I had just come off doing my event. I was feeling pretty high doing that, and I started doing weekly events because I wanted to keep that momentum going. And I recognized that that people were interested in what I was doing by that point. So you're right to say that, and I appreciate that. That's very kind of you. I wanted to do a panel. Specifically, I wanted to talk to ed tech entrepreneurs and CEOs about what they wanted from people like me to get hired at a company that they ran.
Yeah.
And so I put out a comment on LinkedIn, or a post. Someone else, her name is Jennifer Beach, great woman, thank you. She commented and said, hey, you should talk to this guy. And I said, okay. And so I reached out to this guy, and I was like, hey, his name's Jeff. I was like, I would like to talk to you about being on a panel. And he's like, I don't connect with recruiters. I was like, that's great. I'm an unemployed academic. And he's like, oh, okay, let's have a conversation then, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to hustle, and I'll do that. And I think this is asterisks, right? I'll say this, that my doctorate degree is rhetoric, right? And I think that I got my doctorate degree in rhetoric not because I studied it well, but because I knew how to persuade people to give me a degree, right? I think that's what it was.
The most meta degree ever.
No, it really was. It really was. It was pretty amazing. And so I get on a call, and here's what I've learned about CEOs and entrepreneurs is that we resonate. Like if I'm talking to somebody who's grinding, we resonate.
Yeah.
Because there is a spirit in an entrepreneur. And I think that spirit between an entrepreneur and a teacher are more kindred than we think.
Yeah.
They're very similar. Like a teacher, you're your own boss. Like, you have to run your own people. You have to manage everything. You have to create your own content. There's so much that you need to do.
And
you're a solopreneur, especially
with chaos.
Yeah, especially like with the academic life, right?
Yes. Yes.
It's very, very alone. And so I get on a call with this guy, and he says, so I convince him to get on a call with me. I'm about 45 minutes out before doing one of these chats that we're going to be doing.
Yeah.
Right? And he says, do you have time for a chat? And I said, yes. I can either sit here and look nervous, or I can be talking to somebody. And so I was like, I'll talk to somebody.
Sure.
And so the first thing that he says to me is, I have a pile of work on my desk, and I don't want to do it. So I'm sitting on my deck, and I thought of you. The number one thing that your listener should be doing right now is going out and talking to people.
Yes.
Informational interviews.
This is all
right?
I preach. I'm like, networking is
Yes.
not even a thing, okay?
Yes. And
change your focus.
And the way that you network is that you be memorable. Right? You walk away from that meeting and they remember you. How do people remember you? Is that you tell great stories with concrete detail. That's what we teach our students, right? We're writing teachers. That's what we do. And so we get on the call, and then he says, and the second thing that he says, here are all the reasons why I wouldn't hire someone with a PhD. And he just listed them, right? And frankly, there are probably a lot of reasons why people want to leave academia right now. We just need to own the fact that academics can suck.
Yeah.
And so we want to avoid that.
Go in that direction.
Exactly. And I love academia, and it's great, and people don't suck. And I told him, and I said, me being me, I said, I don't disagree with anything that you're saying.
Yeah.
At all. You're talking about everybody before COVID. We have COVID now. You have people like me who do not want to leave the classroom. And I told him, I do not know what you do at your company. You give me 3 months, I'll be one of the best employees that you have. He said, really? I said, yeah. So it's just the nature of a teacher, nature of an academic. Someone who gets a PhD, that's who they are. They're driven individuals, often misguided, very, very driven. To no fault of their own, because that's academia. And he said, that's interesting. And we ended a call. 3 days later, he calls me and says, hey, I have an idea. He starts talking to me. I was like, do you know anything about data? I was like, nope. He's like, I wrote about data, but I don't know how to do data. He's like, you can learn that. You're a learner. Yeah. I was like, are you offering me a job right now? He's like, I don't know if it's what you're looking for. I was like, man, I'll take it. Like, what is it? And he's like, and so I interviewed for the job a couple weeks later, right? And I got a job as a business data analyst knowing nothing about SQL, about Tableau, nothing. Yeah. I went in and got that job because what do we do with data? We tell stories with it. Right. That is the value of data. And people who have it don't know what to do with it.
That's very true.
Right? And people who have been trained on how to learn and consume massive amounts of information are very, very good at understanding data. And people who are especially writing folks, right, are very, very good at narrative. Yeah.
We assimilate points and narrativize.
Yeah. Exactly. And so I got the job, and it was great. And then I had some fun, and then I left. And that's another story. And then I got this job that I have now, which I absolutely love. And I work in like the most 1980s cubicle office environment that you can imagine. Yeah. And I love that I can compartmentalize my life now. And I got the job in the very similar way. It's a construction holdings company, right? And they want me to use Power BI, which is another data visualization software. I was trained in Tableau. Yeah. I went into that meeting, into my interview, just very frank, and I said, I don't know construction. I don't know Power BI, but you invited me here to an in-person interview, the first one I had in 5 years, and so I think that like there's something here. And I just knew at that point, if I needed something that I didn't want to leave in a year, like I did with my previous position, that I could be there for 5 to 10 to 15 years. Yeah. I needed to be as upfront and me as I could. And there was at one point where I even said in the interview, I can be very abrasive. And they all laughed and said, welcome to construction. And I was just like, oh, thank God, this is going to be amazing, right? There was even at one point, the interview, they said, we know you don't know how to use Power BI. And we still brought you here because of this line. And they pointed to it and said, storytelling with data. Yeah. That's what we need. you can learn this because we're learning it too.
It's just technical.
Yeah, it's just a technicality, right? And learners, right? Teachers are learners, hopefully. They're good teachers or good learners. And so I got this job in the exact same, very similar circumstances as my last one, where someone came to me and said, we have recognized and seen that you have been doing something. We like it, and we want you to do something different over here. Mm-hmm. The number one piece of advice that I give to people is that you need to stop standing still. You need to be running in a direction. You need to be running because it is far more easier for me to help someone who's running in the wrong direction than to see someone standing at an intersection. I have no idea what that person wants. The person running, I have an idea. You should take a left up here.
Well, how do you know what direction to run in?
You don't. You just need to do it. Like everything, like that question, right, is fundamentally founded in a lack of confidence.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, I think that is right. I mean, I always say that most of the opportunities that I've come by were serendipitous in that I didn't know that this thing I was doing over here was going to amount to that. It just happened, and it'll be something that I was just like, well, that'll be fun, or that'll be cool, or that's interesting. I don't know why I'm doing this, and it seems minor, and then it tips somebody off. I did a presentation at a professional conference when I was a high school teacher, and I just thought, oh, it would be cool, like I was interested in being an academic. Let me see what that's like. It was not a big deal, and when I applied to get my doctorate, that's what I asked later, my advisor, like, why did you let me in? Like, I was very subpar student. And she said, well, you were already doing things as a K-12 teacher that we want to see you do a few years down the line. And I was like, well, that worked out. That was just something I kind of threw onto my CV, right? Didn't know. If you're here, you've probably been feeling it for a while now, that pull to leave teaching. But with that comes the anxiety of the unknown, the fear that you're actually trapped, and of course that daunting question, what's next? Well, enter our new 90-minute holistic strategy session. This is tailored just for you. It's aimed at helping you uncover careers that resonate, to craft your resume draft, and it's okay if you don't have anything yet and you're starting from scratch. And we'll unlock the secrets to landing your next job with clarity and with confidence. Let's get you out of this cycle of uncertainty and pain and carve out your new path together. Book your transformative session today over at whatsnextteacher.com.
See, no, I like, and here's what's beautiful about this story, right? That word serendipity, right? People think that it's like happen chance or like whatever, and like nothing ever happens to me, blah, 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 blah. Well, serendipity defined is moving, is taking action and being ready to pivot at an opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Because you can be so focused and running so fast and focused that you miss every opportunity. That's how half the people ended up in academia.
Yeah.
Right? Is just because they didn't know what to do next.
Yeah, that's
and
how I
anybody right now who is asking themselves, should I go get a master's degree or should I go get a PhD? The answer is fundamentally not until you've done your ROI, right? Your return on investment. Why do you need a PhD? Why? Why are you going there? Are you just delaying the choice that you have right now of what am I going to do for a living?
Yep.
Don't delay, right? And unless you want to be a surgeon, like something that requires that degree, look at who works with those people, right?
Yeah.
You don't need to be the one sticking the needle. You can be the one writing the documentation for how they should be sticking that needle.
Right.
There's so many other things that you can be doing. Try those things and be ready to pivot. Run. And to the question, how do I know which direction to run? Just know that you don't need to be 100% confident. Be 50% confident. That's better than standing still, because if you're standing still, you're going backwards.
Yeah. Well, so I'm a very organized person, and I have been a linear thinker in the past. And so I would make these detailed 5-year plans. And I thought, man, I'm really good. Like, I am like a student. I am just amazing person. Like, great. Well, come to find out a few years into this and really thinking about it as sort of a life strategy, I'm going, you know what? I'm so focused on this 5-year plan and the crap that I put in it a priori. Like, this is myopic. Like, I can't see all the opportunities that are popping up around me and what the utility might be, because I am so focused on this stuff that I decided, 5 years ago, when like I knew different things, much more limited than I know now. Like, why am I doing this? So yeah, I just appreciate that point of view.
I think, that's one of the values, I think, of being able to try different things, is that you get to go and, I'm sitting here in front of a recording studio and microphones, like, and a keyboard with lights on it. Like, I have no idea, but like the opportunity that you have when you actually try to network. And here's the key. Like, if you're wondering, what do I do? How do I network? How do I get those informational interviews?
Yeah.
Then, guys, stop thinking about yourself, right? The reason that people accept informational interviews is because it feels good for them to help other people.
Right.
They're not just, like, wasting their time unless you go in there to waste their time.
Yeah.
Right? So go in there excited, asking questions, right? You ask this question: how does someone like me fit into a world like yours? And as compelling...
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah. As compelling as it is to talk about all the reasons why you want to leave teaching, no one wants to hear it.
Yeah.
Because it's the same... I'm sorry, it is the same story.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry that it's such a similar story.
Yeah.
I am far more interested in what value you are going to bring to me now. Right? Like, what are you going to do in the future?
Yeah.
Right? Where are you going? And if you say something and they're like, wow, that's weird, maybe you should say it this way, then you learn. It's a language acquisition process. That's why I went with translate academia, because it's a different language with a different value system and everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, how do you become conversant in those discourses? Do you have tips on that?
I do. So tip number 1, talk to people who are in that space. Yeah. Follow those people on LinkedIn. Like, talk to them. Like, figure out what they're doing.
Right.
The second thing that I would recommend is to use LinkedIn Learning.
You can usually get that free through your library.
Yes. We're in the library with the blue lighted keyboard right now, right? And they... most of your public library will likely give it to you. You can get 2 months of it for free from LinkedIn Premium, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Make sure you cancel it. But you want to go in there and take Introduction to Project Management or Introduction to Data Analysis so that you can learn to talk about what you're already doing using their language.
Yeah.
Right? It's not interdisciplinary. It's cross-functional, right? There are subtle differences, but we need to abandon it. It is such a temptation for an academic, and this is where the elitism and arrogance feel comes in, is that people, like, they come in thinking, no, you need to be speaking on my language. That's one of the reasons why I kind of bashed heads with my last job, and why he's probably now thinking I was right to never hire a PhD or whatever the reason, even though I don't think that's going on. I can't remember where I was going to go with that, but it was a fun one.
Well, yeah. So, being able to talk the talk, right, is about that, like, social fitting in, and like it's that biological drive we have, right? Like, I can speak your language, like, I'm worth your time, like, let me in the group. And that's just like a fact of life. Like, you don't want to make somebody do the work of translating your skill set or translating your resume when you're applying for jobs, you're having these conversations. Like, you want to indicate to them that you're part of their group in a sense, or as much insofar as you can.
See, I think that's such a value, because like going back to what we were talking about before, like when you remove yourself from the informational interview, right? Like if you say that you're trying to connect with other people in order to actually build a network and not to try to ultimately get a job, right? But if you're sincere in that, then what you're doing is you're going in and you're trying to connect with another human being.
Yeah.
And when you go in and you try to make that authentic connection, and when it happens, people remember it. And being authentic and vulnerable is not oversharing, right? It's being strategic, and it's being aware that there are opportunities, but you're also bringing opportunity to the table.
Yeah.
Right? And here's what you should never do. Never say, if there's ever anything I can do to help you, let me know.
Too vague.
It's too vague. When people tell that to me, I say, I don't have enough time to talk to you as you're standing at that intersection to figure out where you want to go, to figure out how I can help you.
Yeah.
Someone who comes up to me running is like, hey, I'm running over here. I'm going this way right here. Is there anything I can do for you? He's like, yeah, well, we'll slow down and go this way. And you're going to like save 5 miles.
Yeah.
And I can help you along the way, and you can do that. And when you go and you create opportunity, and like when you create opportunity for other people to not feel bad about themselves, I can't help but believe and know that that's gonna come back.
Yeah.
Like it's gonna be good. And if not, then fundamentally, existentially, why are we here? And that's something that I believe to my core, that we are here and we exist because of the other. Like we are compelled into being when we hear when someone else needs help.
Yeah. It reminds me of when I moved to DC, I had never been in a place with so many successful people, and I was like a kid in a candy store. I was like, I want to sit down with that person. I want to sit down with that person. And it was so interesting to me because even just asking someone to tell you about something amazing that you read that they did, right? They love to share that and they feel great. And there I am soaking up all the terminology, soaking up the way that they frame things that they're talking about. And there's that mutually beneficial piece. But do you have other tips for when you're in an informational interview, how to not make it about you?
Here's one that comes up that I think would be cool, right? If you think that you are talking too much, give yourself a little timer. Like I saw this on a TV show, right? Like they said like she had to make a call to a client, and they could never get the word in, and so the woman said, all right, here's like a little 2-minute timer and flip it. You don't say anything about you until that's over. The other thing that you can go in is just go in with insatiable questions and just be like, oh my God, like, can you tell me more about that?
Yeah.
People love to talk and they love to tell their own stories.
Yes.
And so be inquisitive.
Yeah.
Right? To the point of just, I mean, the reason I got explicitly, I was told the reason I got this job that I have now is because I was so excited about data. Of just that enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Avoid asking for contacts or referrals or references or anything like that. What you could say is something like, no, I just leave it there. Just be like, say thank you for this being a part of my network.
Yeah. And that's the way to not make it feel icky, because that's what I hear so much.
Yes, and every time someone has an icky conversation, right, they're going to remember the not icky ones more.
Exactly.
Those are the ones that are going to stand out. Those are the ones that they're going to want to hire.
Yeah.
Right? Like people really like to say that they're a people person, or whatever, or they're good at communicating. They're a good communicator. Okay. If you don't have any evidence showing that you're a good communicator, I'm not going to believe you. I was making a point there. I lost it. I'm sorry.
No, that's one of my strengths.
Losing points. Point from me.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking too about. Now I'm losing my points.
Is it okay? Can I talk to you about this cool thing that I'm working on?
Yes,
okay.
Go for it.
So, one of the reasons why I'm so happy with the job that I have right now, and the cubicles that I have, is because it allows me to compartmentalize. I was really, really worried as being someone who was either on teaching in front of a classroom or on a sales floor, someone who just walks around and talks to people. I had to be at a cubicle 8 hours.
Yeah.
That was a difficult thing for me. I actually asked ChatGPT. I was like, what should I do about this? One of the things that they said to do is like, you need to remember that you're there to you're there to work. I was like, that's a good point. I'm here to work.
Some of the obvious stuff is always...
Yeah, exactly. And, oh, can you help? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so you were asking ChatGPT like why you're like.
Yeah. Okay. And I was yes, thank you. And I was really, really worried about being in that space. But the reason that I'm so happy about it is because I have understood that my job is not the source of my happiness. That my job, fundamentally, I need to use it to meet basic Pavlov's needs, right? Like those basic needs, so that I can do some other cool self-actualization. And I realize that, and that's what's so appealing about education, is that you can achieve self-actualization in your functional job as a teacher, which is such BS, right? So the thing that I'm working on now, and thank you for letting me talk about it because I'm very excited about it, it's called Project Rhizome. So I came to Tulsa through the Tulsa Remote Program. It was awesome. And then I bought a house here, and now I'm in this Builders and Backers program.
Oh,
and they
love that.
And you should apply.
I did it. Okay. I did it last round.
Oh, it was awesome. Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah. So they gave me $5,000, right?
Yeah.
So here's what I do with my $5,000. They give you $5,000 to conduct an experiment, and I said I am a writing teacher. And when what I studied was the ethical use of big data, specifically language as a data set.
Yeah.
My dissertation, I collected 350 inmate handbooks, and we decided what does it mean to correct somebody based on language of corrections in these handbooks for
that's
inmates.
Fascinating.
And so I love data and I love writing, and then ChatGPT happened. And then I realized everything that I need to do in order to make it so that I don't know how this is going to be received, but we don't need English 101 and 102 anymore.
Yeah.
I don't think that they're working right now anyway.
It's so funny because literally today, my friend that I taught with at the university texted me and said, got my first AI warning on my, turnitin.com software. And I was just like, you know what? I don't know what I would be doing. Sorry, I got nothing to say to you, girl.
I would be teaching my students how to use AI. I'd be all over. I have never wanted to be in a classroom more than right now with the advent of AI.
Yeah.
Oh, it's fundamentally amazing. So here's what I want to do, right?
Yes.
So the ethical use of big data,
yes.
all of this. I'm taking this $5,000 and I am building an AI-powered teaching assistant. A teaching assistant that will grade your writing, your students' writing, for you so that you can focus on content.
Right.
Nobody wants to teach sentences anymore.
Yeah.
No one teaches sentences past 9th grade. Just doesn't happen. Because people want to think about critical thinking. And people say the byproduct of critical thinking is good writing, which is not true. That's just not true. There is not a there's not a correlation there.
Yeah.
Right? We feed that narrative, but it's not. So, I think that there's a lot of universities right now trying to make really hard decisions. How do we serve more students with fewer people? And they're looking at English departments, and they're very, very large, and they require large class sizes.
Oh, yeah.
And nobody's very happy with the state of writing of college graduates anyway.
Yeah.
And if English departments are not responsible for teaching writing on campus, who is?
Yeah.
When they don't really want to claim it. And you know that they don't want to claim it because they're asking inexperienced graduate students and overworked adjuncts to teach these classes.
Yeah.
If they really cared about it, they would be teaching those classes.
True, yeah.
Not the people who don't know how to teach. who end up teaching about podcasts instead of sentences.
Yeah.
So I am going to build a piece of software, a product that can grade writing in tandem with the biology professor. Students do writing in their other classes.
Yeah.
But those teachers, and they see the bad writing, but they're not trained in how to assess writing. Let the biology teacher grade the biology. I'll grade the writing.
Yeah.
Right? Let the histories professor or history teacher grade the history. Check those facts. Let me look at the transitions.
Yeah.
Right? And that way, every student is going to get consistent feedback across all classes.
Yeah.
How am I going to build it? What's wrong with AI today? We don't know how it's built. We don't know what's going on with the data.
Yeah.
Back to my $5,000, I'm collecting essays from students.
Okay.
Right? I want to build AI, and I want to build it from scratch using ethically sourced data.
So you're not even going to tap into ChatGPT. This is like
Nope. This is ground up, something new, right? That's a complicated question about the ChatGPT. It'll use fundamentally the similar algorithms, very different data sets.
Okay.
Right? ChatGPT was trained on a Kaggle data set, which is about 12,000 student essays written for like AP exams and things like that. The reason that ChatGPT sounds like a 5-paragraph essay written by a high school student is because that was the bulk of the kind of data that it was being trained on.
Yeah.
And the people that were training that data preferred longer sentences. That's why it's so verbose. It's because the people who were training it on longer sentences preferred longer sentences.
I gotcha.
Right? We don't need that kind of training on an algorithm.
Right.
Right? So I'm collecting 5,000 student essays. And I'm giving away $5,000. I'm giving away $500 to 10 students. I've already given away to a student in Boston College and a student in Kennesaw State University.
Oh, that's where I got my master's.
Beautiful, right? So there we go. This is a beautiful connection. This is how serendipitous. And so I have $4,000 left to give. I just recorded a news segment in Roanoke, Virginia, about what's going on. I have about 30 to 40 users. I have about 50 essays, so I have a long way to go. But to all your listeners, like if you have essays or if you have students, I don't know when this is going to be released, or if you have students that are through 9th grade through postdoc, I want that writing. Because I believe it doesn't matter what class, it doesn't matter what grade, a good transition is a good transition.
Well, and students aren't getting any feedback about their writing in other classes.
It's because you have like I was a writing teacher at a school. I had 4 classes, 25 students each, right? It was a 14-week class. Every 2 weeks, I was signing 8 pages to every single one of those students. I did not have the time, capacity, or motivation to grade any of that.
Yeah.
And I wasn't being compensated for that time it took to grade.
Yeah.
If you look at the average pay of an adjunct teacher in the United States, it's something like $17 an hour. It's so bad. If you look at certain areas and if you factor in the teachers who have to grade writing, it gets as low as $5 an hour.
Yeah.
We're worth more than that.
Yeah, and it's too painful to do for that.
Yeah, and nobody wants to grade those things anyway. By the time that I'm done with my thing, right? Like when you grade a transition and you give it a score, let's say like someone's being kind and they're only grading transitions, right?
Yeah.
They're making about 10 decisions in their head about sentences. I can train a computer how to think like that.
Right.
Right? And so that way, I'll be able to come in by the end of this, by the time this is all trained, saying, because like after I get the essays, I'm going to do it as a crowdsourced, I'm going to get vetted community experts. I'm going to crowdsource train it. I'm going to say, hey, you're a writing teacher. You look at this sentence and you tell me, because otherwise you're just replicating me and all of my biases.
Right.
If I get a larger group of people, I'm mitigating bias, which is what we need in these tools.
Yeah.
I spent my adult professional life since 2016 thinking about the implications of these technologies in the writing classroom. I remember standing in front of, at a conference, the International Writing Analytics Conference in Florida, saying to a giant room, by studying writing analytics, we are researching ourselves out of jobs. We should be aware of the ethics of that. And thank goodness we're on the front end and not the back end where we're going to get axed, right? Yeah. The room was empty. And now, fast forward to 2000, I had to look at the calendar, it's 2023, right? 6 years later, That is all anybody's talking about is the implications of writing in the classroom.
Yes.
And in the meantime, while everybody's doing that, there was one point when the reason I decided to go with all of this was because there was a point where I said, I can either watch someone else do this and write a paper about it like I would as an academic,
Mm-hmm.
or I can be building the thing that people are writing about.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm doing.
I love it. That is so cool. And so what do you expect the output will look like when you're done with Builders and Backers?
When I'm done with Builders and Backers, I'm anticipating having a semi-complete data set.
Yeah.
I say I need 5,000 essays. The true statement is I need 750,000 sentences.
Yeah.
And so I did some like little math and tweaking and, PR stuff. 5,000 matches 5,000. But I'm going to there's an open source program called open-assistant.io. You can go and you can help them train their version of their large language learning model, their LLM.
Oh, that's sick.
You can go in and like they'll show you a sentence.
Yeah.
And so it's open source. So I'm going to take that, lift it, and put it over here and give it my data set. And then the community, as I'm going to start just like all this momentum that I have, because from day one I said I will meet with you and I'll make you a TikTok. I'll meet with you. Like you can cry and like you can do all this stuff. I will not charge you a dime. Why? Because I know in a couple of years I'm going to be asking you for data. I'm going to ask you for these essays. I'm going to be trying to build a product that might take away your job.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing that ignorantly.
Yeah. Full awareness.
I can do it compassionately, though.
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
otherwise, someone without compassion will do it.
Yep. So true. Well, I know they're going to kick me out of this room in like 1 minute, but is there anything else that you would want my listeners to know or think about?
Stop dwelling. Like, it's so tempting to stay in your identity as a teacher because it is such a part of you. Like, it is like leaving education is like leaving a religion.
Yeah.
You can be sad, but you should be moving forward.
Yeah.
And whatever that is, even if you don't know what it is, creating something, and don't let your narrative stay in teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Make it go forward. Like,
So
it's like
good.
you had passions before teaching.
Yeah.
Teaching was not a monopoly on your life. So if you're struggling, like one of my favorite, like if you're struggling with where do I go,
Yeah.
my advice is go backwards. Go to a core childhood memory.
Oh, that's
Like
great.
you go to my LinkedIn profile, the first thing you read in my about section is when I was in the 4th grade selling cinnamon toothpicks. Why? Because that's where I started hustling.
Yeah.
And that's the persona that I want. Like, you want to go and like say that you're a storyteller with data and you've been doing it. It's like, that's what you want to do, right?
Yeah.
Last thing that you should do, disassociate yourself with your teacher identity, and that becomes an example of what this other thing that you were doing before. You want to go into project management? Awesome. Say, I know how to do project management principles. Here's an example of me doing that in a classroom.
Yeah.
Don't flip it and say, well, I'm a teacher that does project management.
Yep.
No, you say you're a project manager with experience in teaching.
I'm so
Flip it.
glad you're saying this. I had left teaching. I had been working for years, and I was still telling people, I'm a teacher. I feel like I'm a teacher on an extended field trip. And I was like, looking back, like, I want to shake myself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, why couldn't I let that go and own the possibilities before me?
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for this. I know that my listeners are going to get a lot of value out of this, and they're probably going to be saying, can you bring him back?
I would be happy to. Maybe when the microphones are working.
I know. Wouldn't that be great? This is like, being in a room full of candy or something and you just like have your mouth sewn shut. But well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to How to Leave Teaching. It's a complex transition, but you're not in it alone. Dive deeper and find more resources on our website. Keep pushing forward, and we'll be right here with you in the next episode. Hey guys, just a quick note to tell you about something new over at whatsnextteacher.com. It's a quiz. It's a quiz to help you determine whether or not it's really time for you to leave the classroom. Being a teacher can be incredibly rewarding. There's no question about that, but it can also be incredibly challenging. Just ask anyone that's teaching right now. One of the top questions that I get from listeners is whether or not they should leave the classroom. Many are afraid of making a mistake and regretting leaving this career they once loved so much, and they also worry about losing their teaching license, which can be a significant barrier to re entering the profession. I get it. I still keep my teaching certification current, even though I know I'll never go back to teaching. It's just a mental thing. But that's why we created a quiz that can help you determine whether or not it's time to leave teaching. This quiz is designed to help you evaluate your current situation and your feelings and determine if it's time to move on. By answering a series of questions, you'll be able to gain the insight you need to determine whether or not it's time to make a change. Go to whatsnextteacher.com/quiz to take the 2-minute quiz, and then shoot me a note and let me know if your results resonated.